Flavor Flav is going to be hyping them up. You ain't going to see me in the water, but you're going to see me around the water. I'm better at watching than being in the water. I'm going to try to be at as many games as I can.
Nice.
On a side note, if you didn't catch it, watch the goal yesterday during the Spain victory over France in the Euro Cup by 16-year-old Lamine Yamal. Yamal is now the youngest player to ever start a Champions League match, score in a La Liga match, and score in a Euros match. Side note, Yamal's parents from Barcelona won a raffle by UNICEF 16 years ago to be on a calendar with their current Barcelona soccer players. Guess who held them? Guess who held them in the calendar? Yep, it was Messi. Just imagine in the next World Cup, if Messi is still playing, that they end up across the field from each other. That would be kind of cool. So that's Sue's Corner.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, we did talk about the Seine last show, and as far as I know, they still haven't cleaned it up. So
and they will not clean it up.
So they haven't done it since I was there in 1987.
They will not.
Yeah.
I mean,
swimming was banned in 1923. And in Sue's Corner last week, she said that the mayor was going to swim in the river to prove that it was okay, but they've had to postpone it because E. coli levels are still too high, and protesters are putting poop into the river to kind of ruin
it up.
They're trying to clean it up in time for the Olympics. So,
Nice.
only in France.
Well, I see Mr. Scott is here, and Mr. Carroll. How are you gentlemen
Bill Carroll.
Hey.
Bill Carroll.
So, it's exciting to be.
You want to talk about your twins real quick?
Well, I want to make a statement first before I do anything. In my statement, I'm glad the great Bo showed up and his tag team partner Demetrius. And I'm really glad. And I'm going to tell you, I'm really glad that Bill Carroll showed up. You know why? Because that made it 5, which my neighbor, the great George Foreman, took on 5 men at the same time. So Bill Carroll makes it 5. So yeah, I'm here, and I did enjoy the baseball talk. I mean, that was really, the rules, the changes. I think about that. Is it getting old? But what really kind of drove it home to me is I saw something where the Oakland A's, which are getting ready to leave for Vegas, they have no fans whatsoever. They had a thing with the 1974 World Series team. I mean, Dick Green, Campy Campaneris, Joe Rudy. I mean, it was just an awesome thing to remember baseball, as to me, baseball should be. But what really got me is when my surprise man showed up. Herb Washington.
Nice.
No bats. Never went to stole 100 bases in the major leagues. A strategy game. My brother was the last baseball coach at a high school, Central here, which is a lot of good people. I mean, Mike Berry played on the Rose Bowl, Prince, Gary Hines, Sounds of Blackness, but he had a team that was terrible. And he had a pitcher that could pitch, and he taught a guy how to catch the ball. But he had 2 guys from the track team, and he called them the Funk Attack. And so they would just get in and steal bases and tag up. So that discussion, just kind of brought me back to the old baseball days. But again, I'm glad Bill came, because now there's 5. And maybe I can match my former neighbor, George Foreman, taking care of 5 men in one day.
Ready for the bill.
Well, I feel like that started off with the softball, though, because we all agreed that the rules suck.
Right.
Bill, I'm going to give you the last word on that. I was asking, did we think that the art of base stealing was a lost art? but we have one man that has 45 bases already before the All-Star break.
I was going to say they recently rediscovered it, right? It was at one point a lost start. I think there was a season where nobody had 40 stolen bases not too long ago. I have to go back and check, but I think there was a year where like the top base stealer in all of baseball had like 37 or something crazy, some unconscionably low number. And I began to think that maybe the stolen, and of course, as I'm sure, as already been said by Mr. Scott, part of that was driven by analytics. However, two things have happened. One is with the sort of bifurcation of how teams are attempting to score, some teams just get as many football players or guys who look like football players as possible, right? And they just mash, and they don't do anything else but mash. And it's either home runs or strikeouts, with the occasional double if you kind of get cheated a little bit or get jammed, right? And then, but now, refreshingly, there are some teams that have said, oh, wait, there's other ways to score. Who knew? And you've seen the return of the stolen base. I think Shohei Ohtani has 20 or maybe a little over 20, which would have been unthinkable not that long ago, that, you know, a true power hitter would steal bases. And then, you know, once again, he talked about his neighbors and friends. People remember that early in Dave Winfield's career, he was a threat to steal bases. A lot of the power hitters in previous eras, Mantle was a terrific base stealing threat.
Yeah, you know, but
So
go ahead, Bill.
So there was a time when the best players in baseball were good base stealers, right? And then that stopped, where the best players in baseball, even if they were fast, Bryce Harper has always had good speed, but he's never been a great base stealer. So even fast players wouldn't steal bases for reasons that I never quite understood. You know, we saw this thing peak, right? You saw Maury Wills, you saw Lou Brock, and then Ricky Henderson. And then after Henderson and Reigns, it just went down, where, you know, for a while there, from the mid 60s to the, you know, early 90s, if you weren't in the 70, 80 base stealing range, you had no shot to take the title. And very often you need to be in the hundreds. I mean, Ricky hit 130, obviously, once. And then we got to, like I said, I think it was just a few years ago, somebody can hopefully confirm this, nobody had 40 one year, I believe, which just boggled my mind. But now it's back.
Yeah.
I'm super excited. It was the thing I was best at when I played. I was a pretty good base stealer, and I was, you know, played a little corner outfield, but I had a weak arm, so mostly I played second base. But oh yeah, I mean, I'm a scout. I can diagnose. I can spot things. I didn't have a great. I had two things working for me. A really good sense of the strike zone. I was, you know, nimble in the field, and I could steal bases. I could always steal bases, and it saddened me to, like I said, to see it sort of go away.
What sounds like what I would call a Punch and Judy.
Well, right. Yes, I did not have much power, but because of the emphasis on catchers that hit as opposed to catchers who catch, now it's brought back to stolen base. There are so many catchers who are daily catchers, who are starting catchers, who are not good at holding runners or throwing runners out, that they're basically telling you, steal bases. Go back to stealing bases. The chances are now in your favor. So I'm thrilled to see it back. And now the analytic focus and view of it has begun to shift as the success percentages have begun to improve for the top base stealers again.
Well, we're going to, you know, Mr. Scott is looking for his 5-0, so we're going to let Mr. Scott start our next discussion here. And I actually made this question up, and you'll see for Mr. Scott. Okay, Mr. Scott, on an Olympic team that features Take My Talents, a Splash Brother, and KD, Timberwolves guard Anthony says he's the number one option. Do you agree with that, Mr. Scott, or is the young man just being a little brash?
Well, I mean, look at his body of work. I mean, he's taken this team to the cusp of the championship. He is the new force of the league. Should he take a back seat to those? I mean, KD, good player, but hasn't lived up to a lot of the hype. Steph Curry, great player, but seems to be on the downswing with his team. So the fact that he's coming out and saying these things, well, let him prove it. That's my point. That's my thing. Let him see that he has the punch to do it. But yeah, I think he's. But there again, I don't know who's coaching. They may not let him play that much. I mean, he is one of the younger guys, so I don't know. It'll be a fun excursion. We always have Take My Talents. Demetrius's favorite player. Take my talents, and that always causes some consternation. So.
I always love that you just catch strays out of nowhere.
Accurate strays. I like the accurate strays. When he shoots at my team, it's cool. The nonsense strays are fun.
Oh,
but I'm a fan of Mr. Edwards. I think he's going to become the face of the league, and hopefully he stays in Minnesota. We've had a problem keeping people here, so we'll see how that works out.
Yeah. If I can jump in, at the risk of almost agreeing with him, so here's the problem. He's good, right? I am someone who likes confident people. Confidence that borders on arrogance is kind of fun to watch, especially when they can back it up. And this dude is good. I mean, good ain't even the right word. And here's the thing. Every dude there feels the same way about themselves. They all think they're the number one option, and some of them can make a case. He's got a good case. If you
exactly.
tell me he's
like Muhammad said, it ain't right. Bragging if you can do it.
If you can back it up, right? Exactly. He is a great player. He deserves to talk whatever. I don't even think he's talking trash. I think that's a dude who knows how good he is. And nowadays, these kids that don't wear black socks like me, they have this thing called a brand. This is on brand for Anthony Edwards. But he's got the statistics and the body of work as Mr. Scott to back it up. So I have no problem with it. He should say that. They all should say that. He should feel that.
And it's more amazing to me. More amazing to me to watch him as he played 1 year in college.
Yep. He's
19 years old, and he's the number one draft pick. Yeah. I mean, what is your coaching, your scouting? I mean, that's almost to me. It's unbelievable.
His talent was undeniable, though. We saw the talent, right? Oh, yeah. It took him a couple years to really get comfortable in the game. Now he's there. He has arrived. He brought a potato salad. And he's at the family reunion. He's here. So get him a seat and get him some barbecue because he's not going anywhere. So might as well get him a plate. Let's
but based on the rest of the team, he's still not old enough to drink. So he's going to be
right. He's got to fight for beer, but get him a plate.
Right? He's there. He's going to sneak a beer at some point.
Somebody, his teammates going to bring him a beer. You don't have to. Come on now.
There
you go. Yeah.
Since we're talking about this team, though, I don't know if you guys saw the clip or not, but it was priceless because KD is that player that gets in his feels about everything.
Oh, yeah.
And when you saw Steph and LeBron, like, hey, we finally get to play together, whatever, you could see KD in the background, like side-eyeing them.
Yeah.
Like nobody's business. It was hilarious. And then he ends up missing the next 2 days of practice. So I don't know if that was actually a calf injury, if the butt hurt was just so strong.
Right. You never know, man. You never know.
Yeah. You're there, Bo. Do you think that Steph is going to retire as a Warrior?
I mean, everything points to that.
Voluntarily,
Yeah. No, I mean, it looks like it. As good as Steph is, and as much as he's meant to that organization, that is one where they will keep him as long as he wants to be there, right? That's what LeBron would have had he had loyalty to any team ever. You know,
Right.
so it's they'll keep him there because it's not like Clay was the one that made all that happen or anything like Steph is the only one that's untouchable from that range. And unless he wants to do one of those situations where he does come off the bench late in his career just to extend it, then maybe not. But realistically, if he's going to stop as a starter, yeah, he'll retire a Warrior.
What do you think, Bill? Where is he?
He's there. Bill,
He
what do you
froze
think?
up. He froze up for a sec.
Yeah, I don't think he heard us. Can you hear us, Bill? What do you think about Steph retiring as a Warrior?
He says he can hear us. We
Is
just
that a
can't hear
question
him.
for
There you go.
You.
for me?
You.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I think he'll do more than just retire as a Warrior. I think that at some point he'll be hollowed out and stuffed, and you'll be able to touch him as you pass into the arena. I mean, what do you mean?
I
Like,
forgot this is the late show.
they're never going to let him leave. Like, he'll be covered in, like, I don't know, what do they put, like, some sort of, I don't know, lucite or something. I mean, he'll be there till the end of time. Retire? Your great grandchildren will be posing with his carcass. What are you talking about?
I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna jump in and disagree. This is how the business. I'm sorry, David. I tend to think you don't care that much about the NBA, so I just jumped in. Sorry. All right. So this is how the business of basketball actually works. He's got 2 years left on the contract. Fast forward to mid-February 2026. He's on the last year, what we like to call an expiring contract. And there's going to be a team who thinks they're a shooter away. And they're going to throw a boatload at Golden State. And Golden State's going to say, this guy is approaching 40. Now, because of what he does, he might play well into his 40s. But somebody a year from February at the trade deadline is going to say, we're Steph Curry away from winning a championship. In Golden State, we're going to give you 5 picks in 2029 and 2 more in 2039 or some nonsense thing because draft capital is the new hotness. And I think they'll move him. I think they'll sit down. There'll be a big dramatic special on ESPN, and Steph will say, oh, I want a shot at another championship. And they're going to call him a ring chaser, and he won't care. And then he'll probably re-sign with the Warriors 3 months later. That's how the business of basketball works. If somebody is there in February 26th, his expiring contract, the way the salary cap works in that league, will be appealing to some team. And if they offer Golden State enough capital, they'll do it. And he'll understand. And if it's the right team and he's got a shot to win a ring, he'll endorse it. So, yeah, I don't think he finishes his award. I think they've bled that turnip pretty well. They got a lot out of it. And at this point, if you can get something for him and he's 38, 39, I think you do it. I think he gets a shot at a ring. It's one of those deals is going to happen in February of 26. That's my and record this because I'm gonna reference it.
Don't worry.
February
26th. I'm gonna be like, hey, remember I said
this? Can't you bookmark it while you're on screen?
Oh, well, all right, guys. Let's talk.
Yeah, sure, buddy. Get used to eating. What do they call it? Hot plate? Is that not hot? What's it called? Hot dish. Get used to eating hot dish.
Dave, I think I'm gonna start with you on this since you missed all the basketball talk. The University of Georgia has recruited a 6'11" ex-basketball player as an offensive tackle. What do you think there, Dave?
I don't understand what the big deal is. I mean, it's you got guys like Jimmy Graham, Donovan McNabb, Julius Peppers, all former basketball players that were pretty good football players. And I guess what's happening now is that young athletes, when they find that they're good in a sport, they're starting to specialize much earlier in their career, even as early as when they're like 9 or 10 years old. You know, there's kids that play baseball year round and don't play any other sports. And back when I was a kid, I mean, it was all about the three sports stars. And so to me, it wasn't unusual. We had a great basketball player that played football and vice versa. So I think it's good. I mean, you've seen a number of basketball players succeed at tight end. Offensive tackles is not a stretch because they got the body that they can fill in. He'll probably build up some girth. But I kind of go back, like Joe Namath. A lot of people said when he was growing up, he was a football, basketball, and baseball star. A lot of people said basketball was his best sport. And so to me, it's like a good athlete is a good athlete, and we'll see how this kid does. But I think it's just a matter of filling out his body, because it's a different requirement for these offensive tackles. A lot of them beef up, and then you see them after they retire, like Marquise Pouncey. You can't even recognize him now. He was up over 300 pounds, and now he's probably 220, 230, and he's
he
he's
literally
just
looks like he plays in the game.
Yeah, but a 6'11" tackle. I mean,
well, you've had some big guys. You had the guy from the Ravens that was like
I don't think there have been any linemen 7 feet tall.
No, the Lions have a 6'10" offensive tackle right now.
Yeah, they have some very, very tall tackles.
6'10" and a half. And by the way, this kid is not basketball 6'11". He weighs 340 pounds.
Yeah.
He is football 6'11".
Yeah, exactly.
He's already filled out. He's not small.
I think the reason that they want this is for the length. That they want those long arms.
Yeah.
Because now the offensive linemen are allowed to use their arms.
Yeah, but how tall is your quarterback now?
Exactly.
How tall is your quarterback?
See, that's why I want to see him as a defensive tackle. Let's block some stuff.
But he can report eligible. The Lions report Dan Skipper, even though the refs in Dallas don't care. Dan Skipper reports eligible 3 or 4 times a game. He's over 6'10". He can catch the ball. He can line up a tight end. These guys are versatile. He's athletic. To Dave's point, if he's an athlete, they can find a way. 6'11", 340, they'll find somewhere on the football. I mean, if he can do it. 340 is big. 340, he's a big boy.
He's a big,
He could play tackle. He certainly can play tackle. I think he probably be tight end. If he
Split him out to line up against nickel corner.
Exactly. 185-pound nickel corner.
Hey, come on, Bill.
Leading to the term power slot.
Yeah. Stick up for us little cornerbacks there, Bill.
Yeah.
You're just holding a jersey, dragging behind him.
Yeah, you're using the tackles that they've made illegal now.
No, that's what I mean. You're just holding on to the jersey because you can't go for the ankles. You can't go up high. You can't tackle from the back.
You can't do the hip drop, right?
Yeah, hip drop.
Exactly. No, you're just along for the ride, hoping other people show up.
Dave, LeVar Arrington II commits to Penn State. Dave, like father, like son, what should we expect from the young man? I know you follow Penn State.
That's your school, right?
He has some. No, that's where Sue went to school.
Okay.
Sue went to Cal or to Penn State. I went to California, Pennsylvania. But he has some. His young son has some big shoes to fill. 2-time All-American, Chuck Bednarik winner. LeVar Arrington was an athletic freak. I mean, he was really, really good. And I actually blame Greg Williams for ruining LeVar Arrington because Greg Williams was a defensive coordinator that required players to adapt to his scheme. And rather than taking advantage of LeVar Arrington's athleticism, he just had him playing within his scheme and moving the way he wanted him to move rather than using his instincts, kind of like what Dick LeBeau did with Troy Polamalu.
Yeah, but dropping in coverage and nonsense like that, right? Instead of just going after the quarterback.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, from Greg Williams' perspective, it's like he didn't want anybody to freelance because his defense depended on everybody moving a certain way. And LeVar Arrington was just a natural great athlete. And if his son is anything like him, then Penn State has a great find. I think that this is kind of a cool story, kind of related, is that Notre Dame had Jerome Bettis' son, Plaxico Burress' son, and until recently, Ike Taylor's son, Ivan Taylor, all committed to go to Notre Dame.
Wow.
So they had a picture with the three of them with their three fathers. But Ivan Taylor has decided to transfer to Demetrius. You're not going to like it. Michigan.
I knew you were going to say it. Bill, I saw
He's going to Michigan. So apparently, from what I heard on our Steelers town hall, we have a contributor, Mark Bergen, he's in the Believe network, and he's partnered with Ike Taylor. So he gets a lot of inside information. And he said basically part of what happened is that once he was recruited, Ivan never really heard from the team again. And I guess Ivan is the kind of kid that he wakes up at 6 o'clock. He's working out. He's really putting everything into it. And when he got a lack of communication from Notre Dame, I guess he opted to transfer. So, but I think getting back to LeVar Arrington, if he's anything like his father, Penn State they got themselves a really, really good football
We have to be careful with that stuff. This kid's a 3-star, like the 570th rated player in the country. He's not his dad. And it's not fair what might end up happening to him. I wish his name was LeVar Jones because he's probably a good football player, but he's going to have to live up to something he probably can't. His dad was ridiculous, right? And I saw it with Barry Sanders' kid. I've seen it with a lot of. We've all seen it, right? Bronny, right? We don't do these kids any favors when we do that because even though he's like 6'4", 215, similar frame to his dad, say he's a 3-star. He might be a good player, but he's not his dad, and that needs to be okay.
I mean, you got to be a solid player to be a 3-star.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree. I'm not trying to put him. His dad might have been the best player in the country now.
No, for sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
One of the top players in the nation coming out of high school, and that's the thing. If his name was different, we treat him different.
When my son played AAU basketball, Kevin McHale worked for the Timberwolves, and he'd come to all the games. And so we were talking to him, and he was so approachable. I mean, he'd give you autographs and sit there and just shoot the bull with you. And so one of the guys said, how's your son doing? And he says, well, he's playing basketball. And the guy says, I think he should play hockey. I think he'd be a better hockey.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Kevin McHale, So.
I mean, imagine, like you go past the trophy case and, there's your father's on this trophy and this ribbon and,
World champions.
Yeah. So, you have to wonder how big that burden is to bear.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little NFL now. I'm going to start with you here, Bo. Bo, do you believe that the fans will give Tua a contract before week 1? And will Tua be a $55 million quarterback?
I mean,
I didn't say 60.
That's such a tough one. I mean, what Goff ends up with 55, right?
Kind of. If you look at it in a certain way, yes, it's not really true. Goff's really around 49. You got to look at it.
Well, yeah, that just topically, right?
Yep,
because that's what they go off of anyway.
Yeah.
The structure of them is always questionable, but they always go off the biggest breakdown possible. And the thing is if you're comparing resumes, he shouldn't be, right? Obviously, the benchmark of average is 40, right? Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
So it's going to be above that,
yeah.
Right? Could I see him landing at 50? Sure. But being over Goff, I mean, I don't see how you justify that. He's had no postseason success. He's had one decent season. If I was them, I wouldn't be excited about paying all that money for a guy that largely hasn't stayed healthy in the NFL or college. He had one good season last year. I would want you to prove it, because everybody's seen what happened again with Daniel Jones. You have one good season and then you fall apart. It's like, oh, cool, I'm on the hook for a lot of money for a guy I can't use. And the thing is if you're going to spend the money, Dak very well may not be a Cowboy next year. So maybe you don't pay Tua and you make a strong run at Dak, who has stayed healthy mostly, has really good numbers. Yeah, I mean, over his last 55 starts, he has almost identical stats to Mahomes. And I'm not a Dak guy. I'm just, purely statistically, it's very similar. So it's hard for me to want to shove money at somebody that hasn't been able to stay healthy. And then on the other side, you have guys that you'll probably get at a real discount if you wanted to make a change, in the way of Kirk Cousins, who likely won't be the starter there next year, but you could probably get him for a song similar to what Pittsburgh is doing with Wilson right now. And Wilson and Fields, they're only under contract this year, so they will also be available. So if they wanted some bargaining things on their end, they have them, because there's veterans they could use, and everybody can throw to 3 race cars.
Right.
Bill, what's your thoughts here?
Well, as was pointed out, there's always some funny money baked in when you talk about these contracts. So while the headline will be 57 million, 55 million, 50, whatever it is, 60 million, the real money, the guaranteed money, is the only money that's real, first of all. So
He's probably making a good point, though.
I know. He's saying great stuff. He's saying really good stuff.
It's riveting.
No, I'm not patient. I'm going to jump in. I'm giving him a couple more seconds, and I'm jumping in.
Yeah, I think you can go ahead,
All
Demetrius.
right, cool. Here's the deal. So here's the deal. It's really sort of the next guy up thing, but I think that what it really is do you love your guy or do you not love your guy? If you love your guy and you think he's a guy, pay him the money and deal with it. His number, to Bo's point, I agree. I don't think he's golf. I think his number is right around 50, 49, 50. It'll be 4 years, a little under 200, something like that.
Yep.
That's the going rate. That's what you pay that guy. Now, if you don't love him, to Bo's other point, there'll be somebody next year, because there's somebody every year, right? Every year there's somebody, whether it's a vet who's still got some time left or somebody's backup. There's always a Gardner Minshew. Every year there's a Gardner Minshew. There's a Derek Carr. There's a Jimmy Garoppolo. We got a list of them. So if you don't love him, or there's a Dak, if you want to cut the check. If you don't love him, just let him play it out and deal with it. If you do love him, cut the check, because it's just going to get more expensive if you wait.
Yep.
Franchising, that's nonsense. Cripples your cap, that's a horrible idea. Just pay him $50 million, give him 4 years, see what happens.
Well, and that's always a morale killer anyway. Like,
right.
If you franchise a guy, that's a morale killer. Like, you might as well.
To the other players on the team. Yeah, exactly. So my question is, do they like him?
I think part of it, and it's not only does the team like him, but it's what is his relationship with the fan base? Exactly. And so if he's a guy that's a big draw to the team, then probably the team wants to sign him.
I mean, the fan base is a little split on him, because you got to remember the year that they brought him in, Fitzpatrick was killing it, and they were in route to a playoff run, and then they bring Tua in and tanks it, and then proceeds to get hurt. So the fan base isn't exactly over the top for him either.
Yeah,
but
last year he completed a full season. I mean, his trending is going in the right direction.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was hurt early. Now he's starting to produce, and part of it, again, I would still say, what does the fan base think? And that could impact the decision making on the Dolphins' part.
I would never let the fans run my team. I know.
And the thing is like with the 50 or 55 million, the cap is growing every year.
Every year.
And so, 50 million may or 55 million may sound a lot right now. 2 years from now, we're probably talking 60 or 65 million.
That's why I said week one. Bill, you want to finish your point? You seem to be back.
So to finish my point, I'm more interested in the structure of the contract than whatever the headline value number is, which is, gets lots of people talking on shows like this one and shows on the 3 and 4 letter networks. But how much of that is tabbed to things like production or playoff, making the playoffs or making the Pro Bowl or starting a certain number of games. So I have a feeling that he might end up being one of the top 5 or 4 or 3 or whatever the number is paid quarterbacks. But I'm willing to bet he will not be getting 100%, 90%, or even 80% of it guaranteed. I'm willing to bet the percentage of the money that's guaranteed is probably in the 60 to 66, 67% guaranteed, with the rest of it being funny money. That's what I'm guessing.
And so it better have a second year out.
Yeah.
That way, if he gets blown up this next year, you can be like, we'll eat 1 year. See you later.
Yeah, I think their situation is a little unique, though, because a smart man once said, anybody can throw the 3 race cars.
There you go.
I think they're honest in the rule. Anybody can throw the 3 race cars. I fundamentally agree with that theory.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm going to steal that one too. So let's see. Who do I want to? Mr. Scott, I'm going to throw this one at you. Which team, with the quarterback returning from injury, has a better shot of going deep in the AFC playoff? Joe Burrow or ayahuasca?
He knows who that is, right? You gave him the nickname. He probably. I don't say his name, so I can't say it.
Ayahuasca is commonly known as Aaron Rodgers.
That's why he wears green.
Or piece of shit in Michigan.
That's why he wears green.
Well, actually, the one you didn't really mention his name is Mr. Massage. I think Mr. Massage is going to turn the corner. I really do. I think Mr. Massage is going to dig in, and they're going to rally. I really think so. I mean, as far as Rodgers, mentally, I'm not even sure where he's at. I mean, he hasn't shown up. He's older. He's coming off injuries. He hasn't shown any real interest in playing.
You want to see the pyramids, man. Come on. You study ancient history and stuff.
No, I mean, no.
I'm flying there, though.
I would bet more on Mr. Massage because I still think Stefanski's a good coach, and I think they're putting some players around him. And I think, hey, if it doesn't happen this year for him, he still can walk with his bag. So, I mean, yeah.
All right, we'll throw his name in the bag there, too. What do you think, Bo? Joe Burrow, ayahuasca, and now we have Mr. Massage.
So are we talking team success or individual numbers?
The question is team making a deep playoff run. And that's
in order for his team to make a good playoff run, it would have to depend on one of these 3 guys.
Well, so in that scenario, then I'm going to go with the team that has the better defense with the Jets, because you can have the final year of Green Bay Rodgers, which is average, but you saw a team that didn't have a quarterback at all be competitive because of how good that defense was. So I don't believe that Deshaun has anything left. I've never gotten better at something that I haven't done in a couple of years. So, I mean, he takes 2 years off between holding out and a suspension and then promptly gets hurt. He comes back, plays a few games, his one good game, he gets hurt again. I mean, he just hasn't had a lot of football, so I don't think he's going to be great. And then Burrow, statistically, he might do all right. I don't love his defense. So if you can't stop anybody, it's tough to beat people in the playoffs. So I'm going to go with out of those 3 teams, the Jets have the best potential.
Okay. Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, the thing with Burrow, he had an elbow injury, I think, on his passing arm. And so I don't know how he's going to look coming back from that. With Aaron Rodgers, he had the Achilles, and the thing is it's his age, and can he really move? They've shown pictures of him passing the ball, but what's it going to be like when he's taking a snap and you got all these huge linemen converging on him? I agree with Bo's point about the strength of the team, the roster behind him. I think Cincinnati has a good roster. I'm not sold on the Jets, and so for that reason, I would go with Burrow over Rodgers. As far as Deshaun Watson, he's played 12 games the last 2 seasons. He has to show me something to show that he can lead Cleveland down the path. So I wouldn't have him in the conversation.
Demetrius?
I think I'm taking it from a different perspective in that I think Burrow and Deshaun play for the 3rd and 4th best teams in their own division. Right? To make a deep playoff run, you got to win your division and have home games. And I don't like Miami, and I certainly think that the Jets probably have. Buffalo, we don't know yet. We got to see how some offseason stuff. Buffalo got hit by the cap. People are told the cap is figment of your. Go ask Buffalo if the cap is not fake. Sorry, they took some hits, and so the Jets might win that division because both said they got a good defense. I think Cleveland and Cincinnati are the 3rd and 4th best team in their own division. So I don't even know if they make the playoffs. I mean, one of them might. I certainly would think everybody healthy. I'm never going to say anything positive about the dude in green, so don't even try it. I like Burrow more as a person, as a quarterback, as a human being, in every possible conceivable way more than that other guy. And I just think that they play in the best division in football. That's the toughest division in football. And the AFC East is not. I don't know if the AFC East is actually that difficult. So I think they might win it on their defense, whatever other quarterback plays when that old asshole gets hurt. Because he's going to get hurt. Y'all know it.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Achilles, I'm sorry. I've ruptured my Achilles. You kind of never, ever get back. You can get okay. You don't ever get back to where you were. Ever.
Well, you just didn't do enough shrooms and
smoking
bankroll, right?
I should have started taking the point. Apparently. Yeah.
Bill, last word.
Well, since Mr. Scott has introduced the idea of changing the nature of the question, I think I'll follow the path he's laid. I will say Anthony Deshaun Richardson Sr. Senior sounds fine to say about a 22-year-old, but he does have a son who's named after him. I think that, once again, what was just said about a relatively weak division and a team that might float to the surface of it and get a home playoff game. I think that the Colts are a young team on the ascent. They
wait. Hold on, Bill. Time out. We're talking about Deshaun Watson, Joe Burrow, and he who shall not be named. I agree.
I let him put Richardson in.
Oh,
there.
you did.
Because what happened was we had two
because he took out
the third. So I figured I round it out, make it a fourth in case they play golf. Yeah. So I think Joseph Lee Burrow is right now the best player of the bunch, but if we're asking about postseason success,
you got all these on flashcards in front of you, don't you?
You don't need flashcards if you study these people's lives the way I do. But I know about where his father's coached. It's a sickness. But Anthony Deshaun Richardson Sr. is the one whose situation is the one that gives you the best path to the postseason. And that is a young team. We just talked about the salary cap. The salary cap is that team's friend. They are a bunch of players who are between the ages of 27 and 22. Almost every good player on their team is getting better. If he stays healthy, that's the only real question, right? He's realizing, oh, wait, I can't get away with this stuff at this level. if he's learned his lesson from his rookie year and stays healthy, this could be a team that wins 11, 12, 13 games, maybe even. It's a weak division. I think that the class of that division, and I think that they're almost, I won't say guaranteed a home playoff game. But if they're the team I think they are, they have a very good chance at a home playoff game.
Okay. All right. Bo, I'm going to let you talk about your favorite player. Since GM Joe Schoen said that this is the year for Daniel Jones to show that he's the Giants guy for the decade. For the decade.
I was curious where this was going.
Yeah.
My favorite player.
For the decade. Did you hear what I said there, Bo? For the decade, not for 2 or 3 years. For the decade. Joe, what the hell do you think about it? Joe's comments here.
Am I supposed to take this seriously? Like,
Hey, I just wrote it down, Joe.
Did they go and find some monsters for that offensive line? Because I didn't recall them getting a whole lot better in that area. And as I recall, he had 3 different games with double-digit sacks where he looked like he was getting murdered. If you didn't make some wholesale changes to that line, which they did not, Neighbors isn't going to be enough. Hard to complete a lot of passes on your back. So no, I don't think this is the season of the decade or anything like that. I would be surprised if he is your starter at the end of the year. I would bet that Drew Lock can beat him out.
Wow.
Yeah, this is what in organizational leadership they call deflection of accountability.
Yeah.
This is Joe Schoen making a ridiculous, profound statement so that if, and let's just say when, Daniel Jones sucks, it's easier to make the move he has to make because it's going to be painful. Because I can tell you, signing John Runyon Jr. and Jermaine Illuminor is not going to get it done. It is. We know who Daniel Jones is.
Yeah.
You drafted him and you paid him. This is deflection of accountability. Look, yeah. Nope, it's not going to work. And then he's going to cut him or release him, eat a bunch of money, mess up his cap, and he's going to be able to stand at the podium and say, we gave him every opportunity to show that he was the guy for the decade. That's what's
so side note to this question for everybody or anybody that wants to answer it. What is the win total that gets Dable and the GM fired? I'm thinking it's 5. If they get 5 wins this year, everybody's on a bus out of New York.
Clean house at 5. I'm not sure 6 won't get the house. 7 might get the house clean. A bad 7?
Well, a bad 7, Dable's gone for sure, but the GM may not be. I'm saying everybody's on the same bus. I'm thinking 5.
One.
I don't think they can win 7 games.
That's what I'm thinking as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dave, you want to jump in here?
No, I agree with what folks are saying. I'm not sold on Daniel Jones, and basically it's the team. I mean, he doesn't have the team around him to succeed, and I think we talked about this the other week is who's going to go first, Dable or Daniel Jones, and
they'll get a save money in carpool.
And if it's in the season, then Dable will fire Jones. But if it's after the season, well, then they'll cut bait with Dable. Is what I think. If they have a losing season.
Okay. Mr. Scott, Cam Newton says that the Ratbirds quarterback Lamar Jackson is the greatest dual threat in NFL history. You've been watching the NFL for a while, Mr. Scott. What do you think?
Well, if he can win a Super Bowl, I might give him that. On the recency, I mean, there's not a whole lot of really dual threats that I can think of that were that, I guess maybe you could call Steve Young, winning Super Bowls as a dual threat. you know, and my only problem with Steve Young is he thinks he was better than Joe Montana, which doesn't even make sense to me. I mean, that's how he learned to play the game.
Well,
So,
Tell Owen says he was better than Jerry Rice.
you know, I
I
mean,
love
Randy
the
Moss
real
is
quiet.
Randy Moss is at the top of that game. So I mean, they can move those chess pieces around all they want, but Randy Moss tore up a defense. I mean, he broke a defense down. He's back there by himself, raising his hand.
So, you would say Steve Young over
Well, I think of Lamar. They should do it this year. I mean, they done stole our best defensive player, Danielle Hunter. This is, you know, so we're not going to be any good. I don't think we're going to be any good. I really don't.
what?
So yeah, I'll get to that. You know, I mean, I'll get to that. I've checked out some things, but yeah, Lamar, if he should be able to get the job done this year. He really should be able to see the mistake he made in those games, not doing his thing. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was coaching. I don't know what.
I mean,
But
that playoff loss was coaching.
yeah.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that one. You do 6 actual running plays the entire game for a team that led the league in rushing. That's coaching.
Yeah, tanking. Yeah. So, but they, you know, the talent was there. The talent is there. He is the most dangerous dual threat in today's game, as far as I can see. And so, yeah, I'm expecting them to go all the way. And if James King, if you don't like it, well, we can talk about that. You know.
Whoa.
No,
George Foreman.
the rat. Yeah, he always threatens me with that. You know, but when I show up there in Minnesota with my boxing gloves, we'll see what happens then.
I call the police.
Bill, what you think here? Greatest dual threat in NFL history?
Well, I know that we live in sort of an age where, you know, people have short memories and, you know, the sense of history is sort of skeeted right out of us. But I got to watch Michael Dwayne Vick, Ookie, as he was called back in the day, from the time he was about in 3rd grade on. And while I have enjoyed watching Lamar Demetrius Jackson Jr. develop, he is a different kind of runner, right? I mean, you don't see him running through entire teams quite the same way. That overtime run, sorry, Mr. Scott, but that overtime run, you know, the game where he just basically puts the Packers to bed, those are runs that we had never seen any quarterback make before. They're not even the great running quarterbacks, even the great scrambling quarterbacks don't run like that. There were times when defensive backs would have a good angle on him and he would just outrun the angle, right? He was different. We're talking about a guy that ran probably sub 4.4, though I think he officially was down for like 4.44 or 4.43 at the combine. I had people who had timed him say that, you know, that was on a slow track, right? The combine where they run the track they're on now at the combine is significantly faster. This is the old slow track that people didn't like to run on. He was a 550-pound squat guy, right? Super iron hokey at Virginia Tech. This is what people are all 40.5-inch vertical leap. When people talk about great R1 athletes of all time, they need to mention Michael Dwayne Vick. Terrific baseball player, pretty darn good basketball player, but one of the great all-around natural athletes I've ever seen. And certainly Lamar's a really athletic guy, like a terrific athlete too, but not like that. He wouldn't dream of squatting 550 pounds. I guarantee you he can't jump 40.5 vertical inches straight from a standing start. He's not the same kind of athlete that Vick was. He's a great athlete, but not Michael Vick great. So
I don't think so.
No, is my short answer.
Demetrius.
Yeah, so I got caught up on the term dual threat. By definition, it means both skill sets, right? So if you ask me, I hate so much agreeing with Mr. Scott. Steve Young is far, in my mind, 15 years, 30,000 plus yards passing. He's got over 200 touchdowns. Is Lamar a better runner than Steve Young? Probably. Lamar is not in Steve Young's class as a passer, though. That's the problem when you use the term dual threat. And he's got rings. Now, I could put on black socks and introduce you guys to a guy named Francis Tarkenton if I wanted to, right? I think there's a conversation there, and I'm not trying to suck up to Mr. Scott. Fran Tarkenton is what it is. 50,000 passing yards, 350 touchdowns. He had 30-something rushing touchdowns.
But more of a scrambler. To me,
that's the thing. He was a far superior passer, and he said dual threat. I would even contend John Elway might be a dual threat quarterback if you want to. And there's no question he's not John Elway. So to me, I immediately agree with everything Bill said about Michael Vick. He might be top 5 on my list. But I'm telling you, it starts with Steve Young for me. If you truly believe in dual threat, the term dual threat is real. Steve Young's at the top. Maybe Elway's at the top. If you go back and look at Fran Tarkenton, you can make a case. You can make a case. And I'm certain you can make a case for Michael Vick. So, yeah, my long answer is hell no.
Put a cap on it, Dave.
Well, I mean, I would say currently LeVar is probably the best dual threat out there. Another quarterback I would add to the conversation, maybe didn't have the postseason success of like Steve Young, but is Randall Cunningham. His athleticism was just unbelievable.
Great.
And talk about running over and through teams. I mean, he was just incredible when teams were allowed to really tee off on quarterbacks.
He was born 20 years too early.
Yep, exactly. Now, the one thing, though, what LeVar is not is a triple threat. And so my favorite triple threat is Cordell/Stewart.
Oh, here we go. He got a Pittsburgh guy.
I had to sneak that one in.
That's nice. Well done. Well done.
Okay. Dave, who will be this season's Bungles? Meaning a contender that crumbles at the end.
Well, one, I want the Bengals to do an encore. So, an encore performance would be nice. A lot of it's going to depend on Burrow coming back from that elbow injury. But I would tag the Eagles. Last week we were talking about it, and what my concern is with the Eagles, a strong team. They've been a contender, but it's their secondary. And I think that they're relying on some guys that are getting up there in age, and then also a couple draft picks. I think their first 2 draft picks were defensive backs. And so they may be susceptible to being taken advantage of in the passing game. So I'm gonna pick the Eagles as a contender that crumbles, and I'd like to have an encore performance by the Bungles.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the same division you are, but I'm going to go with the Cowboys.
Yep.
Because not only did they take a step back with their cap space issues, having to shed some talent and some depth, but they haven't been able to sign any of their big guys. All of a sudden, you're going to have dissension within the ranks because they're upset about not being taken care of. So I think the first time that team starts to struggle, you're going to see things on the sideline that those of us that aren't Cowboys fans are just going to grab our popcorn and be here for it.
Demetrius.
Dallas was my first choice, but I think Buffalo. I'm worried about the Bills. They lost a lot in the offseason. And Diggs were hurt, but they lost Poyer. They lost guys on the defensive side of that football that I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about Buffalo. So I would watch out for Buffalo. Dallas is the obvious choice. There's no security in the coaching staff. I don't love their quarterback. They've got 3 dudes up at the same time. And that dissension Bo talked about, when still get paid, Micah can't stop talking. I mean, he's going to get paid, I'm sure. And then you got the quarterback, right? And their owner has never seen a microphone he didn't like. That's just a soap opera waiting to happen. I see that, but I'm going to keep my eye on Buffalo. I don't feel good about Buffalo's offseason.
Okay. Bill.
Well, this is why I should not follow Demetrius. So now I'm scrambling around for another choice. Let's see. Well, I guess I could say that I agree with the last two. I mean, Dallas is almost too easy. Like, if they are like the dictionary definition of a team that's just waiting to fly apart at the seams. I mean, like, if you just poke that team, that's right. I'm going to double down on what was just about the Bills. The combination of, once again, the cap is real, as was pointed out. The cap gave them a pretty good punch in the gut. They are thinner at several positions than they would like to be. They can't afford to get injuries pretty much anywhere on defense, right? Their offense is going to be fine, but boy, if they get a run of injuries at name a position group on defense, any of them,
Exactly.
it's going to be tough. And they're playing some good offenses. Somebody mentioned 3 race cars on the show, I'm pretty sure. And gosh, who? I don't know. That was really had a lot of equity built into that one.
I think you stand on that. It's going to be right. We'll just be right as a group.
Well, let's see if Mr. Scott comes up with somebody different. Everybody's picking Dallas and the Bills. They picked the Bungles. What do you say, Mr. Scott?
Boy, there's one team that I want to pick that I think is so overrated, and I think the bubble's going to burst. But I can't do it. I can't do it.
You shouldn't do it.
I just can't. I want to do it so bad, but I just can't.
You do it from a position of strength, though.
I can't do it because I think the division is just, the Bears with their quarterback. I mean, come on. The Green Bay, they're starting from,
you know that, right?
They're starting from the beginning. I mean, the Vikings, Sam Darnold. They did get Jefferson. The best defensive players gone. Yeah, I want to say the bubble's going to burst and it's going to be toppling down, but I just can't. I just can't.
Mr. Scott has exercised some restraint. Guys, it is July 10th.
I really did miss
it is 7:34. It is 7:34.
I'm not stepping down. I will not step down.
This is recorded, isn't it, James?
I feel like I'm on the wrong show at this point.
Oh. Okay, Mr. Scott, I'm going to let you redeem yourself here and let you feel good about your team. So, Mr. Scott, who is your team's Mount Rushmore, meaning the Vikings? Now, you can't pick Jerry Rice because he never wore a Vikings uniform. It's got to be a guy that wore a Vikings uniform. So, who is your Mount Rushmore of Minnesota Vikings? And you only get 4, not A, B, C. You only get 4.
Boy, that's a tough one, but you got to go with Fran the Man. I got to have him at the head of the game. Boy, Alan Page, another one of my good buddies, Carl Eller. My dad said that Carl Eller and Deacon Jones was the 2 best defensive linemen he ever seen. And
84? Hello?
No. You only count the ones that are Vikings. So he's at 3.
I said 3.
He's about to be one of the best. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, of course, 85 is the best. 84 is the best ever.
Yes, that's all I'm saying.
That's
his 4. That's his 4.
But you just
remember the question, Demetrius. It's got to be a guy on your team and wearing your uniform.
No, I thought he said Alan Page, Fran Tarkenton, the other
Carl
Heller and Randy Moss, right?
Randy Moss.
That's
Okay.
his fault.
All right. I didn't hear the Randy Moss. Okay.
No, I didn't either. That's why I chimed in.
Yeah, he couldn't wait for me to say it. But Randy Moss he's the best. He took the top off of all the defenses. I mean, it was ridiculous. That thing that they hit, and with Cunningham in that 1 year, that's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen.
Yep.
Jake Reed. Oh, and then he had Robert, the running back.
Yeah,
Robert Smith.
Robert Smith. I mean, Olympian. Got around the corner and gone. So it's hard to leave out. There's so many of the people. And going to school in Mankato, I knew a lot of the guys because they trained there during the summertime.
So, Bo, are you going to represent the Seahawks here, or
Of
you got
course.
another team?
Of course. No. I'll do the Hawks. And although Jerry Rice did wear a Seahawk jersey, we're not going that route.
Seahawks legend.
We will
Jerry
stick
Lee
with
Rice.
the original number 80 in Steve Largent.
Easy. Yep.
And then we'll go Kenny Easley.
Good call.
Amazing safety.
Good
We'll
call.
go Cortez Kennedy. Tez was a beast. And then with a modern era pick, I will take Bobby Wagner. And it was really hard to leave guys like Hutchison and stuff off. But Bobby Wagner will go down as one of the best linebackers to ever play. So, that was a good modern era to drop in there.
All right.
Four is tough. You got Adrian Peterson.
Yeah.
He stopped by. Tia wore a Seahawk jersey for a second. There's a lot of guys that came and got a coffee in Seattle. that was all they did.
Yeah. That's why I said 4, because I know 4. I mean, we can all get 5, maybe 7, right off the top of our heads. But okay, come on, Demetrius. I know you got some Lions here.
Of course. So the easy ones are Barry and Calvin. I don't know if anybody can debate those two. If you don't know, Google Dick Night Train Lane.
Woo!
Right? And I did my own podcast with his son. And it is, by everybody's account, the best podcast I've done in 6 years. Dick Night Train Lane. I could do 30 minutes. I won't. I will say Google him, look at his stats from interceptions, and then he became an executive for the team, first Black executive. Night Train Lane, big deal. He's there. He was actually easy for me. I got the first 3 without really flinching. Then I had to work. But then I just said, forget it. Matthew Stafford deserves to be there. He just does. And so it's Night Train and Stafford with Barry and Calvin. And I left off some great ones. But we're not doing
Stafford over Bobby Lane.
Over
Stafford
Alex
over Bobby
Garrett.
Lane. That's tough. That's tough.
But this is his 4 now on his team.
So
Lombardi.
there's other guys, Dick LeBeau, and I could do honorable mentions, but I'm not. It was a tough choice.
That's exactly why I put it there. No ABCs, no.
I could run down 5 more who got thought about, but Stafford got.
I got to jump off, guys.
All right,
Enjoy
Bo,
the rest of your night.
give us your final thoughts there, Bo.
So final thoughts, just supporting our local 15U NFL flag team. They are going to be headed to Canton, Ohio next weekend to play in the flag football championship. So pretty cool. A buddy of mine's one of the coaches there. Pretty awesome. So hopefully they show out.
All right.
Good seeing you, Bo.
Good seeing you, man.
Peace, gentlemen.
All right. Have a good one, Bo. Thank you. Okay. My 4. I'm going to go with me and Joe Green, Jack Lambert, Lynn Swan, and Troy Polamalu. It kind of helps that I can go see Troy almost any day of the week out here in San Diego. So
Nice.
But so that's my.
David's doing the Steelers too, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious to see if they're different.
Yeah. So Dave, what are you for?
All right, I do a Steelers top all-time 500 that I update every year.
Nice.
So I got 500 to choose from, but I went, number 1 with Joe Green because he changed the franchise. And it wasn't about winning; it was about hating to lose. That's what drove Joe Green, and that went right into the franchise. And then Franco Harris with the immaculate reception, their first playoff win ever. So I would have Franco, Joe Green. And then I skipped the 70s. I mean, there's a lot of guys, but then I started to come to the modern era. I skipped over Rod Woodson. I mean, he was a great
Yeah,
player.
tremendous.
Yeah,
But
it was hard to choose between Troy and Rod.
Yeah.
oh yeah, but I couldn't leave off Mel Blount because
There you
again,
go.
he was a rule changer, just like
Yep.
Night Train Lane. Night Train Lane, I mean, they had to change the rules because they brought in face masks in order to protect the players. And he thought, well, hey, that's a nice handhold. That's a nice handle because it wasn't against the rules. He caused changes to the game from his play, Night Train Lane. Well, so did Mel Blount. And so I have Mel Blount on there. And then for number 4, I went with Troy, but there's a crazy horse monument. And so, hey, Demetrius would have appreciated diversity and equity. We have to have our crazy horse monument.
Exactly.
I went with James Harrison. And the reason I went with James Harrison is because I think, number one, they changed the rules because of him. But number 2 is he was the author of, to me, the greatest play hands down in Super Bowl history with that 100-yard pick six. And he was supposed to rush on that play.
Right.
He opted not to rush. He created that play. And the whole team, there was some great blocking, and there's a whole story behind that. But, I mean, his effort on that play.
Ran out of gas at the end,
to me, he's what epitomized the Pittsburgh Steeler like Jack Lambert back in the day. So that's my crazy horse guy. So those are my choices.
Cool.
Bill, I didn't know
Bears?
who you want to go Steelers or who you want to go.
Bears,
Yeah,
Steelers?
so
Who's going?
since we're going through Steelers, I too will do Steelers, and I'm going to start with Jack Butler, who is sometimes forgotten amongst the greatest of the great Steelers.
Great one.
One of the greatest of all time. He was a 3-time first-team All-Pro. He was a second-team All-Pro once, 4-time Pro Bowler back when that really meant something. He led the league in interceptions in 1957. He ended up his career with 52, I believe, which at one point was in the top 3 historically. I think at the time he retired. He was one of the few great Steelers of his era, unfortunately. But he just, so many of the things he did, 865 return yards. He was tremendous after he got the ball in his hands. Bobby Dillon and he ended up tied. And Butler did it, I think, in 9 years. I think he had 52 interceptions in 9 years.
Yeah, he hurt his knee, I think, and cut his career
which is
short.
a crazy thing, right? Is how he managed to do all that in this period. A member of the 1950s All-Decade team, a member of the Steelers All-Time team, and not mentioned enough, I would say. Went on to also, work for the team. The Steelers did a good job in those days of keeping guys around the team. I think he spent a total of 46 years in some way, shape, form, or fashion.
Blusto's scout. He was big in the scouting department.
Right. Yeah. So he was around the team. So he was a minor part of the team eventually turning around. Well, I say minor. I shouldn't say minor. But he was a part of the team eventually turning around because by that point he was in part of the talent acquisition of the team when the team went from being poor when he was a player to being very good. And he just doesn't get mentioned enough amongst the great players of all time, especially the great Steelers of all time. Jack Ham. And I loved Lambert. And Lambert was the more fun of the two to watch. But if you talked to the coaching staff about if they had to get rid of one of them, which one could they live without of the two, they would have said Lambert, because they could put Ham on the other team's best wide receiver and he would cover him like a corner. People don't mention Jack Ham amongst the great coverage players in the history of the game enough. watch Super Bowl 10. There's times he's running stride for stride with guys like Tony Hill and Golden Richards. It's crazy how good he was in coverage. So they played base defense practically all the time. Tony Dungy, I think, by that point, Dungy was the coach, I think. But Tony Dungy had been their nickel at one point, and actually led the league in interceptions one year. But they didn't, which is shocking because he didn't play that much. But their linebackers would just stay out there and cover. And so if you went 4 wide, okay, no big deal. I'm just going to run with your wide receiver all over the field, and they would just do it. That was the crazy. So Ham was the key to what they could do on coverage because he could cover like a cornerback and play the run like one of the best run-stopping linebackers. By law, you have to have Joe Green. If you don't have Joe Green, then you should just stop talking football forever. Let me see. So that's Butler. So now I have to decide between one of the quarterbacks and Polamalu. I personally prefer Polamalu, but somebody has to put a quarterback up there, so I'll do it. I'll throw Bradshaw up there, and this is ironic for me because I was very much sort of anti-Bradshaw early in his career. He used to just drive me crazy. When I was a young fan, I was like, "Oh, please, just don't do anything." Every time it's like all you got to do is just.
Oh no!
No.
Come back, Bill.
Middle of some good stuff.
It took
There
him
he
a
is.
There
while.
you are.
Got him back.
It took him a while to eventually get the memo. To his credit, he closed out strong. And I recently watched the last game of his career, right? I recently watched that game. He was coming off of an elbow injury, and then he re-entered playing against the Jets when they had that great sack exchange defense. And he's coming off the elbow injury, and he probably comes back a little too soon. And he's playing well at first, like really well at first. And you see him blow the elbow back out and then try to go and continue to play, which didn't work out for him. But he went from being this, Farvian, only worse kind of character who would just tear your heart out with the worst timed interceptions at the, just when all you needed was just not to make a mistake, to, really one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And like I said, I'll be honest, there were times when I rooted for him to get benched early on. I used to watch me play the Bengals, and the Bengals would be, nowhere close to us as a team. But I'd watch how efficient and smart their quarterback was and how hell for leather our quarterback was. Like, you don't have to do all that. We've got this team with the greatest defense I've ever seen. Just play simple football. But to his credit, he did right the ship. And like I said, the last 5 or so years of his career, even though he still would occasionally, do the high wire act, he played really well in big games down the stretch of his career. So I'm going to give, as much as I love Troy Polamalu, I'm going to give it to Bradshaw for my last spot.
That's a nice forward, Bill.
Okay. Mr. Scott, it seems like the Vikings defense will be facing 7 of the NFL's top running backs. Mr. Scott, what do you think about that defense you're going to put on the field this year?
Well, all the more reason to not let Danielle Hunter go. We got a great defensive coordinator, Flores. I don't know what to think about this defense or this team this year. The quarterback situation, I'm hoping Aaron Jones still has something left as a running back. Hate to say it, Demetrius is, he's sitting in a catbird seat right now, and I'm just waiting to see what's going to happen, and hopefully my mind will be changed. We'll see what happens. I'm not a Jared Goff fan at all. I think that's just a fluke. And so if the quarterback situation, if they can run the ball, but I just really don't know. I just don't think the talent is really there all of a sudden. So I'm trepidation, and I'm not a homer like some people are on this show. No matter what, they'll bet on them no matter what. They don't care. They don't even have a team. They don't have no uniform. Nothing. They still bet on them. So I mean,
It's called a segue, James. That's called a perfect segue, is what that's called.
Demetrius, is this the year Mr. Golf wins the MVP?
He won't win it.
Okay.
The national media is not inclined.
I gotta get all ears here.
The national media is not inclined to give an award like this to a Detroit Lion. So that's fine. And guess who doesn't give a damn about MVP awards? Me and Jared Goff. Now, the narrative nationally and even locally to some degree is it's Ben Johnson. It's Ben Johnson. And Ben Johnson's a great play caller. I like Ben. 2 years ago, Ben Johnson was tight end coach and nobody knew his name, right? Okay, cool. You got top 5 offensive line. Yep. You got a 2-headed monster because Jahmyr Gibbs is just scratching the surface. Look out for that kid. But at the end of the day, if we named 55 Super Bowls, 110 quarterbacks, right? Teams. If you don't get great play from the dude behind center, the rest of that shit doesn't matter, right? He's going out there and he's executing it. And watch, because I'm a geek and I have. YouTube has every game they played last year. And I am bored sometimes, and I've watched them all. He doesn't have the best arm in the league. His arm is above average. What he does, pre and post snap, people just don't get. He sees it. Pre and post snap. He knows what he's doing. So do I think he's great? I think he's top 7. For sure. He's good enough to take them to the Super Bowl. For sure. He won't win MVP. Somebody else will put up better numbers, maybe on a better team. I don't care about any of that. I need us to play one half of good football and go to the Super Bowl. We were a half away from the Super Bowl. We were up 27-10 at halftime, and then we did. So it's cool. This is how you get there. You progress. Mr. Scott hasn't watched enough Jared Goff. For the last 2 years, he's been one of the top 5-6 quarterbacks in football. All the metrics say it, the regular metrics, the advanced metrics, completion percentage, all of them. Look at any of the metrics. Jared Goff's top 7 quarterback for the last 2 years. He's 29. He's been to a Super Bowl. He's got his bag. He's literally playing his best football right now. Right now. Which is why we were a half of away from the Super Bowl. He didn't lose us that game. Go watch the game. 3 plays lost us that game. None of them were Jared Goff. But Jared Goff knows people are never going to give him that credit. So he doesn't really give a damn. I'm focused on my expectations for the team. We had a major weakness. It was in the secondary. They addressed it. I expect us to be right there. Right there. I expect San Francisco to be in Detroit for the NFC Championship game. That's what I expect. And Jared Goff will do what Jared Goff's been doing for 2 years, just executing. Just execute. God forbid Jameson Williams figures it out. God, forget the homer crap. We're scary. I'm telling you, we're scary. We're really, really good. And I've said this years when I knew I didn't mean it. I knew I was talking shit. This is the first time ever I'm like, I'm not even talking trash. We might be the best team in the NFC, and I don't feel bad saying it. Jared Goff is a really, really, really good quarterback, and he is definitely Bill Carroll's Hall of Very Good. He is a first ballot.
Well, as Dave said earlier, we are taping this, right?
Yes.
Yes. But yeah.
He taped the episode 2 years ago when I said we're a year away, we're going to win the division, and we're going to. 2 years ago, I said it. It's back there. I'll go dig it up and bring it out. I have no problem with anything I'm saying. And the metrics show it. Brad Holmes won executive of the year. I made a joke 2 years ago and said, Mrs. Holmes, clear off space on the mantle because Brad's bringing home a trophy. Nailed it. It's cool. Jared Goff is exactly what I want him to be. He doesn't care about all that BS. Jared Goff wants to win football games, and they're going to win a bunch of them this year. He doesn't care about MVP. I would love it if Jahmyr Gibbs wins MVP. Because that kid is special. We haven't even seen the best of that kid. He is special. So yeah, I'm obviously hype about the team. I don't care if Goff wins MVP. Doesn't matter. If they go to the Super Bowl and Goff doesn't win MVP, who cares? Okay. I don't think Jared Goff does, by the way. Nobody cares about that stuff.
All right, Dave. Now, this is Mr. Scott's favorite part of the program, where we talk about the Steelers. So, Dave, what impact is sudden suspension going to have on our lineup? 8 games, that's pretty significant. Pro Football Focus leaves out offensive tackle Broderick Jones on their breakout list, but they did include Keanu Benton and Joey Porter Jr. To make the breakout list. And are we looking at a run first offense this season, Dave?
All right. So, first with the breakout list, as Mike Tomlin would say, we don't care. Broderick Jones, he's going to be switching positions. He's going to be moving from right tackle over to left tackle. And then Troy Fontenot, I believe, will end up playing right tackle with Dan Moore. Maybe Dan Moore will start the season there, but we'll see. And I'm fine with it. Keanu Benton, he's refreshing on the defensive line. They need some young linemen and he has a really nice motor on the interior. And Joey Porter has really, I think he was the best rookie defensive back among them, and he really did a nice job, and they eased him in. So I see Joey Porter. Hopefully he can continue where he left off in 2023. In terms of the impact of Sutton's suspension, two things here. First football, and then the non-football aspect of it. Football-wise, the Steelers knew that he was going to be suspended. The standard suspension for a domestic violence case is 6 games. The NFL suspended him for 8 games, which is due to aggravating circumstances, I presume. One is the when you read the details of the allegations, it's pretty horrendous. I mean, biting the girl, throwing her against the wall, all this kind of stuff, and then evading the police for 3 weeks.
Right.
It sounds really bad, and some fans are like, well, why are we enabling this guy? Kind of goes to the opening thing when we were talking about the Dutch volleyball player.
Yeah.
Right. And now it's not as if the Steelers don't have a history there. I go all the way back to Ernie Holmes, Bats Holmes, part of what he became a part of the Steel Curtain defense, the defensive line. Well, he was arrested early in his career on the Ohio Turnpike. He had been taking shots at vehicles on the Ohio Turnpike. And then when the police responded, he started shooting at the police. He's lucky he wasn't killed. And the Steelers, instead of cutting bait with him, they stuck behind him. And they believe that he may have had a nervous breakdown or something like this. And then he went on to win a couple Super Bowls, with the Steelers. So something leads me to believe that Cam Sutton, there's something there where they feel that he's redeemable and they're giving him a chance. We'll see what happens. That's on the non-football aspect. On the football aspect, actually the suspension kind of works good for the Steelers because Cam Sutton is a very versatile player. It didn't really work out for him with the Lions maybe, but he can play the slot. He can play outside, but they really need an interior nickel back, and he can do that. And the Steelers' schedule, the way it's lined up, all 6 of their division games are after like week 10. They have a really difficult second half of the season. They play the Ravens on a Saturday, and then 4 days later they play the Chiefs on Christmas Day. I mean, they didn't get any favors from the schedulers. So in this sense, once he's going to be able to practice with the team through training camp, he can participate in the preseason games like Deshaun Watson. But then once the season starts and he goes on a reserve list, and then he won't be eligible to come back until 2 weeks before, I think around October 14th, because he'll be eligible for reinstatement. It's not automatic, but he's eligible for reinstatement October 29th. So what that could mean is you can have a versatile veteran defensive back coming in right in the middle of the season, especially if the Steelers find that, they've had injuries in their secondary, or people are underperforming. So it's I think it's a positive impact football wise for the Steelers. In terms of the offense, run first offense, Arthur Smith, and I wish Reggie was on here because he's probably intimately familiar with Arthur Smith, but he does not really use many 3 wide receiver sets, 11 personnel. He's more of a 12 and even 13 personnel, which means he's going to have the running backs involved more in the game, and importantly, the tight ends. So I see it not so much a run first offense as a possession, let's control the ball type offense. And that should benefit Pat Fryermuth, and hopefully maybe even get Darnell Washington involved into the offense. Pittsburgh has been very unsuccessful with their wide receiver or with their running back screens. They have not been able to do it the last 3 or 4 years. I'm hoping that Arthur Smith gets the screen game going with the running backs. So the fantasy football fanatics, they're going to hate the Steelers because Arthur Smith likes to spread the ball around. He doesn't he doesn't go with like the one running back or the one wide receiver. He likes to spread it around. But I think that could actually benefit the Steelers' offense this year.
Okay. Final thoughts. Bill, why don't we start with you?
Did we lose him? Damn.
Bill,
can you hear me? Can you see me?
We can
hear you.
There you go. There you
Okay,
go.
you can hear me at least.
Okay.
Well, this has been an interesting time, as I said, and from people who I guess learned about Reggie Jackson's early brush with the facts of what was going on in America at that time. Just a few weeks ago, we celebrated the 4th of July with all the sort of incumbent things to unpack if you're a Black American. And then to add to that, we have a tremendous air of uncertainty about a bunch of things in this nation. But certain things that are things that I always come back to and always sort of celebrate is that this is the birthday of several really, really, really vitally important people in the history of not just sports, but this nation, including the late, great Arthur Ashe. He shares his birthday with, amongst others, Sugar Ray Robinson and Dwight Dock Gooden. But Arthur Ashe is one of those people who legitimately, if he had never, ever, ever picked up a tennis racket, just through his sheer force of character and courage, would have affected the world in some way. From Maggie Walker de Alexander High School in Richmond, Virginia, he stood out from jump, right, as an extraordinary person. He goes into, at that point, what was probably the single whitest sport in America that didn't involve riding a horse and jumping over things. So he's at a time when, baseball is just beginning to integrate and things like that. The NFL has just a smattering of Black players. So, and the NBA, still has a gentleman's agreement about how many Black players are on the court at the same time. At that same time, he's playing juniors tennis, right, in the South in America. It is difficult to explain the loneliness and isolation this teenager, right, must have undergone as he clawed his way up the, once again, insular, closed off, lily white, unfriendly, chilly ranks of juniors tennis, eventually finding his way eventually to the tops of the profession. Uh, that he did this, and of course, you talked about Thea Gibson also at other times, but that he did this with little to no external, he had internal support. His friends and family were very supportive, but the tennis establishment did him no favors. Uh, for those who don't know his story, please read it. He wrote a memoir, and it's fantastic. But he devotes his post tennis life to improving the lives of others. Unfortunately, through a drug transfusion, contracts HIV and dies. Unfortunately, he had so much to offer the world. While it would have been tragic under any circumstances, this man who had so much more to give and so much more to do, it made it especially tragic. But to the very end, he was trying to educate and grow and help other people. There should be an award given in sports, particularly, non-team sports, for extraordinary heroism and accomplishment. It should be called the Arthur Ashe Award. That there is not, to my knowledge, a national award with that name shows me something's gone very, very wrong. But on this day, July the 10th, I want to celebrate the life of one of the great Americans and great athletes this nation's ever seen, Arthur Ashe.
Mr. Scott, final thoughts.
Well, just a couple of quick things. A couple of weeks ago, I was asked to come play music with a group called the Sounds of Blackness. They had a 50-year reunion, and I played with them back then. I said, 50 years? I mean, you go see all these old folks? Okay, but I was surprised. I actually knew the songs. We had a really good time. I had just a wonderful time, and I was hoping to see one of my good friends who's from Detroit. I was hoping he could come up. His name is Greg Adams. And Greg didn't make it. And Greg, he was a good friend of the coach for the Lions, Jim Caldwell.
Mm-hmm.
And they played football for Iowa, and they were roommates. They were roommates. And whenever I would watch the Lions games, Greg would be standing on the sideline on the field. And, thinking about that, I wanted to ask Demetrius, why did they get rid of Jim Caldwell? It seemed like he was doing a great job.
You want a short answer, or I can extend it? Yeah, the short answer is this. They hired a guy from New England named Bob Quinn. Bob Quinn came over. Jim Caldwell went to the playoffs. He couldn't fire him the first year. They were coming off a playoff bid. He always had every intention of grabbing Matt Patricia or the OC, whose name escapes me. Bill, help me out. Dude that went to Raiders, failed twice. Josh McDaniels. He always had every intention of bringing a guy from him. But Jim Caldwell just went to the playoffs. So then they went 9-7 the second year and barely missed the playoffs, and he fired him anyway. Bob Quinn wanted to do his own thing. He never intended to keep Jim Caldwell, which sucks. I am with you. I still miss Jim Caldwell as much as I love Dan Campbell.
Yeah. Okay.
Final thoughts, Demetrius.
I have never done this, but you let Bill go first. So there is a short list of athletes I idolize. It is super short. Mary and Matthew Vergers are my idols. I'm gonna be honest. I got lucky in the parent pool. Those are my idols. But I never miss a chance to talk about Muhammad Ali. But very close second is Arthur Ashe. So Bill gave you a lot, but today would have been his 81st birthday. I think he warrants two people dedicating their final thoughts to him. That's how impactful he is. Bill was dead on. He got a posthumous Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is a bigger deal than people think. The main stadium at the U.S. Open is named in his honor, but Bill's right. There should be an award named after him. I think that the book Bill referenced is called Hard Road to Glory, and I read it twice. I read it about 15 or 18 years ago, and I read it again about 3 years ago, and that we lost him so early. He wasn't even 50, right? And his family had a heart situation, so he genetically got this. and then in a blood transfusion from a procedure, right? He contracts it, and there are very few people to me that have a great career, and then post-career they do more impactful things that makes their career accomplishments almost look small. And that is I've always, Muhammad Ali is on a pedestal for me, and we could do a whole podcast in my opinion. I have Arthur Ashe is there. Arthur Ashe is there, and that he was lost so young is sad. To Bill's point that there's not more awards named after him is sad, but the Arthur Ashe Foundation for the defeat of AIDS has been critical in the fight against that disease. And I mean, we didn't even talk. You know what Bill didn't even talk about? He didn't talk about wins. He didn't talk about 3 Grand Slams and 2 more in doubles. He didn't talk about being the first black dude to win at Wimbledon, at the U.S. Open, at Australia. He didn't say any of that stuff. That's what Arthur Ashe is. Bill talked about the man in his life and forgot about the tennis. Right? That's why I was like, forget it. I intended to talk about him all along. And even if I would have just came on and said everything Bill said, he almost needs to be mentioned twice. To me, Arthur Robert Ashe Jr., out of respect to Bill, Arthur Robert Ashe Jr. would have been 81 today, and he should be mentioned way more than he is. Side note, the song Optimistic by Sounds of Blackness got me through a very tough period in my life. I will always be a loyal Sounds of Blackness fan. So.
Boy, I got to, I really thought that there was an award named after Arthur Ashe.
There is the ESPN. I'm not a fan of ESPN, but the ESPYs have an Arthur Ashe Courage Award.
Yeah, okay.
And that's meant for people that have contributions that transcend sports.
Exactly.
And I think that Bill and Demetrius just described somebody that embodies that.
Yep.
That his body of work actually went beyond just sports and
Why are they not? Whatever. That's a whole other show.
Yeah, I thought I had heard of one, but I wasn't really sure.
Yeah,
but I'm glad
you're right. I missed.
Yeah. So Dave, take us home.
All right. Well, I mentioned Paul Skeens earlier, and I'm usually not a big the amount of money that some athletes make. I've often made comments about the ungodly sums. Like Tom Brady, $317 million in his career. Pretty soon we're going to have $1 billion players that have been paid $1 billion, just not outside of sports, just paid by their team. And I've often kind of been skeptical of that. I tend to feel that wow, that's a lot of money for one person. But I look at Paul Skeens, and the Pirates are 3 games under 500. They've never been able, for the past 20 years, they haven't really been able to bring a lot of fans consistently to the stadium. I usually, once a year, I take a group of college classmates. We get a group together. We go to Pirates games. July 20th, I'm going. It's a Saturday game against the Phillies. A lot of us will be there the night before for that series. I'm hoping that one of those nights that Paul Skeens pitches. But, right now he's 5-0. He's struck out 78 batters in 59 innings pitched. But all of a sudden what's happening is the stadium is getting sold out.
Yeah.
And so I had a couple extra tickets. I put them on SportsGeek, and they were gone like in a couple hours. And that's, we were talking about Caitlin Clark a few weeks ago. That's the difference that one player can make to a franchise.
Yeah.
And so I have to kind of step back to think about, I'm skeptical about the money that these players make, but on the other hand, they're making those franchises a lot of money. So my hat's off to people like Paul Skeens, Caitlin Clark. Arthur Ashe kind of brought a whole group of people, African Americans, into playing tennis, kind of like Tiger Woods did for people. He changed golf from like an elite game into a game that everybody played. That's something that Tiger Woods did. And so I would just like to acknowledge those players that are those athletes that are difference makers. So those are my final words for tonight.
We had a guy out of Akron named Lee Elder. He played a little golf too, a little bit before Tiger, but
Yeah, but yeah, and you're right. And Tiger will be the first to tell you that Lee Elder deserves to be. But to David's point, little black kids started playing golf in the mid '90s.
Lim Barney's second wife, her sister was married to Lee Elder.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey.
I think there's a picture in the Lions facility of the four of them actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And by the way, I did my master's thesis on athletes' pay, and I would just say one thing: every one of those dudes, when you see one of those contracts, they simply accepted an offer. Somebody else offered them all that money. All they did was pick up the pen and sign the paper. So that was my final thing on my thesis was they accepted an offer.
Yeah. Right. I mean, for the job that you do now, if you could make $1 million a year doing it,
and if I could generate
that down,
right, if I could generate, I could get people to pay $80 to park and 80,000 of people watch me do my job. My company would pay me whatever I ask. Mr. Scott's not going to come watch me at work. Hey, fun. Yeah, they generate a lot more than they make. No matter how big that number looks, trust me, Skeens is generating, like you said, he's filling every fifth day. That stadium has exponentially more people eating $10 hot dogs and drinking $15 beers and paying $60 to park, and they're buying shirts and hats and pennants,
everything.
Because and that's the thing with the NFL, because of the salary cap, we know exactly their impact.
Yep.
They get 48% of the revenues.
Yep.
All right, guys, let's get out of here. Glad to have everybody on the show. Don't forget, our fantasy football season is coming up soon. Demetrius, I'm coming to get my shirt back.
I will be keeping that shirt. That's a double dip shirt. I won both leagues. I ain't getting the shirt back. I need to make a new shirt. I ain't giving that shirt back. I want to be like Mr. Scott. You're going to have to come and take this shirt.
All right, guys. Have a great weekend.
I want to give the scoring to 5 men against me. The scoring. I've gone to the scorecards through AI and what have. It's a split decision in my favor. I'm a split decision. The last round when Bill came, it got really tight when Bill Carroll came, but I was able to pull it out. I jabbed, moved.
Who are the judges?
Split decision. That's great.
Have a good one, guys. Always everybody. I got to see more of you, Demetrius. Talk to you later, guys.
I'll see you.
Take care. Have a good night, everybody.
See you next week.
Yeah. Are we allowed to get a chance to look at the scoring on these cards before? Well, next time, I guess. I would like to see the scoring.
I think the guy that came in fourth in the hot dog series this year has the official scorecards, and right now we're not privy, so we'll see.
Got it.
But have a good night, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah.
Take care.
So you next week you'll be here, Dave, but the week after you'll be gone.
Yeah, and it'll be like for probably four weeks.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm going to be at training camp, and then we're going to have a nightly town hall during training camp. So I won't be able to join during training camp.
Oh, okay. Be interesting to see some of the subjects you're going to talk about at training camp there.
Yeah, well, because there's a number. I don't get back to August 2nd, but there's other guys like Ken and Bryce and Brandon. They're going to be at training camp, and so then the idea of the town hall is that people can come on, and if they have questions about players, then the guys that were at camp then can give them a firsthand report on what they saw.
Okay. So you're going to miss training camp then?
Well, I'm going up the 7th and the 8th, which is right before their first preseason game. So I'll see them practice on a Wednesday and Thursday, and then I'm going to catch a Pirates game, and then go to the first preseason game too.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I'm only going to I think there's 16 public sessions.
Yeah.
16 public training sessions, and I'm only going to be able to see 2 of them.
All right. Well, hey, have a good trip, and